with our session today, leading hybrid work teams. Just checking that you're in the right place, because Power BI is around the corner. Anybody that has just turned up, you're all hello. If there is an emergency evacuation, the staff will guide you safely from the building and take everybody else with them. And I am encouraging everybody to kind of, if you're active on socials, to particularly things like LinkedIn, highlight that you're here and highlight that you're kind of enhancing and improving your skill set. And this session will go till 11:45, and we see that kind of 15 minutes between 11:45 and 12 as the time for questions, and maybe some one-on-one questions with Joe here. So hopefully, and again, I just remind you all, a lot of what we're talking about are kind of half-day and full-day courses. But what we want to do is to really just give you tasters, pointers, and something for you to take away from every session that you attend. And hopefully that by the end of the day, you'll have kind of at least 3 ideas from each of the presentations that you've attended. That's our hope. But we can't kind of cover absolutely everything. It's kind of give you an overview. So Joe is going to help you discover ways to lead yourself and your team in a flexible hybrid work environment. And welcome back to our virtual people as well. Thank you for joining us and staying with us. So Joe is a facilitator and trainer with ATI-Mirage, and she combines her extensive business expertise with the latest training techniques to deliver dynamic training workshops on a range of topics including leadership, personal and professional development, IT and photography skills. She draws on broad-ranging skills gained in the finance sector, consulting, not-for-profit and small business to make training both focused, practical and relevant to all of you. So I'll now hand over to Joe. Enjoy.
Thank you. Welcome everybody. Thank you for having me today and thanks for joining us at ATI. Yeah, when they said to me, can I talk about leadership for 45 minutes? I went, really, is that it? I could talk about leadership for days. So 45 minutes is not very long, but we'll have a chat about some of the aspects. And if you're in this morning's sessions, we've already touched on a few of the things that I will be speaking about today, but hopefully we'll get your thoughts, and I'm going to be asking for some of your comments as we go through as well. So I guess the hybrid workforce was coming to a certain degree. Some of us had already started working from home. You've been given some flexibility. But I guess with the onset of COVID and the pandemic, it's accelerated all of that much quicker. And a lot of us have been thrown into it, whether we like it or not. Okay. So what that has done though, is also forced us to look at how do we lead in this new environment, which is part in person, part remote, a combination of everything. And what we are finding is that the skills that you have as a leader are more important than they ever have been before. And I want to talk about leadership from these 3 aspects today. We're going to talk about it in terms of what's your style, what's your behaviours. We're going to talk about communication and engagement. So how do we get that happening when our people are not face to face with us? And then I want to talk about collaboration, because people aren't together, how do we get them to collaborate in the environment of a hybrid workplace? And the thing to remember in this hybrid workplace is communication becomes a lot harder. Okay, so when you have everybody in one place at the same time you're there, there's lots of communication going on without a lot of effort. But when we have people in a hybrid workplace, maybe not the same location, maybe not the same time that you're working, our communication skills become so much more important to get that piece right. Okay, and we know that people don't leave organisations; they leave bosses, managers, and leaders. Okay, so if you're not bringing your leadership A game every time, you may potentially have turnover of staff, which is what we don't want either. Okay, so let's have a little look about where we're at. Sorry. this is a new environment, so we can only look at this from the last 12 to 18 months really of where we're going with all of this. This may change going forward as we get used to more of a hybrid work environment. But at the moment, our key takeaways from the past year to 18 months is that people actually do prefer choice. Okay? Studies have shown about 72% of people prefer this mix of remote hybrid working, part in the office, part at home. It gives them flexibility. It gives them choice about when they can work. And there's a lot of positive that has come out of the remote work model, okay, or the hybrid model, in that knowledge workers say their work satisfaction has gone up. They have been able to maintain some work-life balance. They might have been able to spend more time with their families. They haven't had to sit on the freeway for an hour every day. Okay, and for some of us, that's a good thing. So it can be positive as well, but it's also not for everybody. Okay, and there are people that have struggled in this environment because they don't feel that sense of belonging to their teams, to their workplaces, to the work that they're doing. So it is a bit of a mixed bag, and this is why it becomes hard as a leader, because how do I lead these people over here that are really happy with it and these people over here that are struggling with it? Okay, so that's one of the challenges that we will talk about. The big thing that we do know is that relationships matter. Okay? When you don't see someone every day, the interactions that you have with them are very important when it's remote or online. Okay, so we need to be making sure as leaders we have really good relationships with all of our people going forward. And it is time to work differently, and it's time to lead differently. Okay, we need to have investment in tools. We need a flexible mindset as a leader because this is new. It is unprecedented in a lot of ways, and we have to think about how we make this work. Okay, because this isn't going away. Okay, it's unlikely that we are going to all return to the office next year and just resume work the way we work. That's unlikely. Okay, because there is 72% of people actually want a hybrid workplace and they're happy with it. So that's one thing that we need to start thinking about as well in terms of our shifts. So what does a hybrid workplace look like? We've got a couple of scenarios here. So we could have this side where we've got some employees work on site, others work remotely. Or the other one we've got on the other side is it's all remote. We don't even have an office anymore. We don't have a work site. We're all working online. Or you might have something in the middle where all employees work on site for part of the week and then they're remote for the other part of the week. Or it might be a different combination. Who can give you some examples? What does your hybrid workplace look like at the moment? Can anyone stick their hand up and tell me? Yes.
And everybody is supposed to be in the office on Mondays for a team stand-up.
Yeah.
And we usually do a lunch that people can go to. But the rest of the week, most people don't go into the office. I live close by, so sometimes just to keep my sanity, I'll go in so I can socialize with other people.
Yeah, great. So Mondays is the day that we're all in the office. We have a lunch together, and then the rest of the week we work flexibly from our homes, or if we want to come back in, we can. Who has a different model? Yes.
So we have multiple sites. So
Great.
we can work from home, we can work from our own office, we can work from one of the other sites.
Excellent. Okay, so a little bit about that spoke and hub method where you've got little hubs that you can go to, which is great. Who else has got an example? At the man at the back.
Yeah, I think there's some rich and poor. Some people are struggling to get a headset, where others have the full Teams super environment.
Yes.
So in our place, there's some that are really destitute when it comes to the infrastructure, and some are not at all.
Yeah, and that presents challenges then as a leader, doesn't it? Because how do you engage all those people? How do we get the resources for those people that need them to make this work? So yeah, that's an interesting one as well. Does anyone have no office or no site? Right, so pretty much we've all got some kind of hub or somewhere we can go to have some of those face-to-face interactions that we did previously. So it is interesting to see how it is evolving. It's interesting to see which models work best, what we need to look at. Your organisation may just decide that this is what's happening. Okay? And you have to accept that and you have to work with that as the leader. So the next step in that then is then consulting with your team and working out how you're going to make it work from a practical point of view. But one thing to think about from a leadership perspective is always come at it with a yes attitude. So yes, we can do that. Let's work out how. Okay? Because if we always come at it as, no, that's not going to work. No, that's not going to work. What message is that sending out to our teams? So one thing I'd like you to take away from today is always come at it with a yes attitude and then work out the solution with them as to how it's going to work. So we've got here, our aim with hybrid working models is to ensure that employees are given the flexibility to work effectively when and where they want to. Now, obviously, there's going to be constraints with that because sometimes it's not always practical to have everybody working at 10 o'clock at night if you have pressures at 9 o'clock in the morning. Okay? And I know that some people have come up against this regularly. But we need to give everyone the tools so that they can equally contribute. So as the gentleman said at the back, do they have the technology in their homes to work from home? Basic stuff that we consider basic being headphones, computer that is accessible, internet access, reliable internet. Who's in an area of Perth that doesn't really have great internet? There is a couple of areas around Perth, Metro, that are not great.
And people remotely.
People remotely as well, yeah. So it is interesting to think about what tools does everyone need to equally contribute. Okay, we've got a little graphic here. So Monday work at home, Tuesdays in the office, Wednesday, Thursday at home, and then Fridays in the office. What does it look like for your team? You've got a question there, Seth?
Yeah, I've got a question. Also depend on the organisation, the appetite for working from home, for example,
Yes.
or got to be present in the office.
Yeah.
And I think we sort of mentioned briefly in the morning session that it's about trust and understanding your team's productivity.
Yeah.
The problem we got is the organisation that we're it's a lack of clear policy. Some pockets, yes, you can work from home, you can work in different sites, and but centrally the head office, no, you cannot work from home. So that's a kind of understanding of clear policy.
Yeah.
For
So
a leader, sometimes do you approve the staff to work from home, or do you just bluntly say no? It's going to be one with the policy.
yeah, so that lack of clarity as to whether we can or we can't work in a hybrid model. Some areas of the organisation are designed to do it, and some are not. So that is a leadership issue from the very top, isn't it? So how are we going to do this? Some organisations, I guess, are still playing a bit of catch up about how do we manage this, how do we mobilise our workforce in that way. And I guess we just have to keep asking the questions. Because we have to sort this out, because this is not going away. Yes.
But
Just touching on tools there, sometimes there is also a reluctance for people to use the tools.
Yes.
So the last snap lockdown, a number of my meetings I've converted to a Teams meeting, and in fact all of them, they come back and said, oh, it's all right, I'll wait until you're back in the office and we'll have a face-to-face meeting. So there is a little bit of reluctance in adopting the tools around using Teams or WebEx, Zoom, etc. So that for me particularly has been a challenge in, it's not so much leading a team, but it's working with executives and leadership to get them to meet with me. So,
Yeah.
and that's around tools. It's not just about having them, it's about getting people to use them.
Yeah, so that's about our training, that's about our upskilling of our people, but also finding out what's the underlying cause behind that. Is it that they don't know how to use it, or is there something else? They don't want to be online. They're uncomfortable with you zooming into their study because it still looks like it, you know, the bomb went off 5 years ago. So that's about asking questions and trying to understand more about, is it a training issue or is there something else going on there? And this is where, as leaders, we have to keep asking those questions, but in a way that is supportive, not in a way that is, well, why are we doing this? You know, what tools do you need? How can I help you with this? What seems to be the roadblock here? So we have to be very conscious of the language that we're using in our leadership style, which I'll talk on more as we go through. So leadership behaviours. So let's have a think about these for a moment. So we had this comment from one of our clients when we asked what's the main observation about leadership so far in your hybrid flexible work environment. And they made this comment, which does come from Michelle Obama. Being president doesn't change who you are, it reveals who you are. Okay? So whatever style you have as a leader will be accentuated in a hybrid workplace. Okay? So if we think about a micromanager, for example, you're constantly in the office looking over your shoulder of your employees, making sure they're on track, you're achieving great results, but you're constantly asking, where are you at today? Where did we get to on that? How did that meeting go? When you put that online, what does it feel like? It's going ping, 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 oh, another ping, oh, I've got to have a meeting, got a phone call, and you will feel even more stressed by that micromanagement style. Okay, if we think about the really boring manager, okay, who's got, you don't have to tell me, but who's got one of them who runs a meeting like this and okay guys, let's go, we're going to do this today. That gets accentuated when it's online. And if you're watching that through MS Teams, you're almost asleep. I've got some people laughing over here, you clearly know what I'm talking about there. If you've got a mistrustful manager, so you don't quite have the trust with them, if you don't see them every day, that mistrust is going to grow. Okay, and also if you've got a real command and control manager, okay, they want to make sure they know exactly what you're doing when you're doing it. That is going to be accentuated as well when you get into a hybrid workspace. Okay, so this is why we say that leadership is never been more important than in this type of workplace compared. It's always been important. Don't get me wrong, even in an office, but we're saying that we need to have more focus on this going forward as well. So what do we need to do as leaders? We need to be more self-aware. Okay, I don't know if my next slide shows this. I'll talk about this as well, but more self-aware. We need leaders who develop some camera skills. We mentioned this morning, you know, you have your laptop down here and I'm looking at my manager's nose for the entire meeting. Okay, not cool. All right, you need to have the setup. You need to be able to use the tools you've got there. You might even need to go and do a little bit of training around how do I present myself online. Okay, those of you who were in the discussion this morning about the gentleman, was it the ANZ guy who showed ANZ CEO? He showed his team his office and he collects memorabilia on wars and that type of thing, war memorabilia, and he showed it to the people that were on the Zoom call. And again, that's just part of that connection with his team. Okay, so how comfortable are we doing that? You know, so we have to get better at our presence online as leaders because we're modeling the behaviour that we want to see from our team. Okay, if you turn up, as we said, in your gym jams to have your meeting, is that what you're expecting from all your team? Or if you've still got your shirt and tie on, is that what you're expecting? Yes.
I'm in an organisation in the City of Swan, and we went to full work from home for everyone who could at the, on the lockdown initially, and have formalised it as ongoing. And our experience, which seems to be pretty global, is actually that those humanising moments are about leaders communicating their preparedness to do things differently, and they're actually incredibly valuable. So our experience of that has actually been, my executive in gym jams is exactly a positive thing, and shambolic home offices are not an issue anymore. You can put fake backgrounds on. MS Teams did that way back, you know.
Exactly.
So, and they're all the better when they are, you know, and that doesn't seem to be, unlike a lot of other things, sort of transitioning to new norms. We feel in control of defining our own practices in these spaces and evolving them and inventing them, the courtesies and etiquettes. So that's actually sort of the slightly different view perhaps.
Well, no, I totally agree, because you can't take one model and say it's going to work for every organisation. And in some ways we already have that, or we did have that in our office-based environment. So I know I've worked for a number of finance institutions here in Perth, and some are very formal. You wouldn't go to work without a suit on, and then some are very relaxed, and you could go almost in a singlet and it would be okay. And it's the same across different workplaces. So it is about finding what is the norm for your workplace and what is acceptable. And I think though, as the gentleman at that said, it is good to have some guidance though as to what our policy looks like, what are we expecting in this work environment. But that might be something that does develop over time, because this is a changing beast. As you said, you all got go and work from
It's a
home.
new professionalism. It's evolving, and it's
Yeah.
that evolution and the lack of clarity
Yeah.
is of course critical to be able to embrace that.
Yeah, and in some ways, as leaders, we are exposing a little bit more of who we are, because you are zooming into my house. You can see my collection behind me, or my chaos, or whatever it is. But again, that's part of the human connection that we have, and that leads to that authentic presence of who you are. Okay.
Is it important to have a bookcase in the background? I'm just super curious about reading. I wish I could sort of on TV. I just want to read. That you know a person by their library. I think they're bricks in someone's life,
Yeah.
and I'm noticing more and more people having that as the backdrop.
Yeah,
And
or-
they're really messy too.
Or are they the fake backdrops that
They got
you're
the
talking
training.
about?
I
Yeah.
know that you can get a stylist to come into style your
Oh,
background,
yeah.
that's a thing.
Definitely. If you send it to
Conjuring
me,
it.
I'll have photos of behind me, because I'm a photographer. So yeah, it really is, it depends. And I think there is an authentic element to when you do see the mess behind me and all my papers stacked up. There's an authentic way of looking at that. So I think it really comes down to you.
But Malcolm Turnbull, remember he gave a couple of talks with this horrific curtain behind him, and it just diminished. That Darling Point just collapsed. He's got this mansion, and he's got this tacky curtain, and here's his estimation went down like that. I think.
Yeah.
You got to think about it.
Yeah, I think this is about developing and thinking about how your presence looks online. How do I look? Yes, at that.
So with the bookcase, it's not really about really being authentic, it's about the other people on the call. I'm a visual learner, so I'm reading your bookshop, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, Quiet, The Power of Introverts, and I haven't heard the message because I'm reading everything. So it's visual noise. Anything it might not be noisy to some people, but some of your audience are visual learners, so you need to cater for the whole crowd.
So it's an
Unless you're
interesting-
one-on-one and you're both visual learners and not visual learners, here's my bookshelf, here's my collection of stuff, of photos. Oh, lovely. Let's move on to the message.
Yeah.
That won't work for me because I'm distracted.
You're distracted. Yeah, that's a great point. Thank you. Yeah, we definitely have all these things. So a couple of points up here on leadership style. So we want to get away from this command and control style. We need to be purpose-driven and solution-focused. As I said, you need the mindset of, yes, we can make this happen. Let's work out how. Okay. We want to look at being more in a coaching role, because we want to get away from, have you done this? Where are we at with this? I need to update on this. Okay. We need to get more into the coach in that we're asking the questions is, what support do you need? When do you envisage that to be done? What tools do we need to make that happen? We need to come into those coaching questions. We come down to personal and professional development opportunities, including the IT part of it. Can people actually use these tools? Do they know what MS Teams is capable of? Are they using Outlook the way it should be used? Okay. What does their diary look like? Are they even using their calendars the way we want them to do that? So they're all things we need to look at. Visibility and clarity. So are we visible? Are we available? When are we available? How are we checking in with them? Okay, these are some of the questions we need to look at. The collaboration piece I'm going to talk about in a moment as well. Focus on the employee experience and culture, not just the outputs. We need the learning culture, so right training, coaching and support, and we need to move away from the power grip of command and control leadership as well. And these are some of the things that we want our team to want to do things. We don't want them to do it just because we're telling them to do it. Okay, this is what leadership is about in this space. So how do we know what our leadership style actually is? We do have a tool here at ATI that we use, which is called the eDisc. Some of you, has anyone heard of DISC before? A couple of people, personality, yep. So we have this DISC tool, and I've taken a snapshot out of our DISC report that we provide to people. I wanted to quickly just run through a couple of the things around DISC. So what DISC stands for is you might be in the top quadrant, which is dominance. You might be down here as influence. The S is steadiness, and the C is compliance. So what we try and do is we try and help you work out which traits you might have, which traits are your natural traits, and which are the ones that you might need to work on a little bit more in terms of leadership, communication style, and your personality in general. So if you're in the dominance quadrant at the top there, you mostly talk about your goals, yourself, your hard values and results. So your dominant people, your real results driven people. If you're more in the influence segment, which is what this profile is showing us here, we're talking about team spirit. They focus on the good things, the future, the people, and on themselves as well. Okay. If you're more in the S quadrant, which is the steadiness, you tend to like agreements, principles. You talk about the past, but you talk about your team a lot more. Okay? And if you're in the compliance quadrant up the top here, you're talking about facts, you're talking about analysing things, you're the details people, you like the rules, you like the instructions, you probably like a good policy as well, I'd say. So if you're up in that corner there, that's what we're looking at here. So with our reports, what we're trying to do is we're trying to help you identify what are my natural leadership traits, okay? And then from that, think about what are some of the things I need to develop more, okay? So the green segment we've got there is where our most natural style sits for this particular person. So very much influencing, creating ideas, their people, communication is open. The dark grey section is at the natural, what we call the natural flexibility zone. So these are where we can go, and it's relatively easy for us. The light grey is our easiest development zone. So these are the areas that we can develop fairly quickly with, you know, not much effort. Okay, but where we have no shading, so where it is white, this is our most difficult zone, and this is where we need to develop some of our tools here. So we can see with this person, they're very people-orientated, communication's open, but if I get them in front of some logical systems and getting them to do some analysis, it could be quite tough because that's not where their natural style lies. Okay? And this is about thinking about where my skills are and where we can go with all of this and the skills that we need to develop. So the other thing we need to think about as our leaders is how are we going to actually make this work, okay? How does it practically work? The pestle analysis is a tool that's used for market analysis generally, okay? Has anyone heard of the pestle analysis, a few people? So we generally use it for market analysis, but we can say, well, our team is the market, okay? So I can work through each aspect here of the pestle analysis, and I can think of my employees as the market and say, okay, from a political point of view, whether it's government mandates, we have to work from home. Or is it organisational politics? What are they saying we need to do in this space? What's economical? How much floor space do we have? How much investment in tech do we have? Okay, what are the work from home costs for our staff if we say you have to work from home 3 days a week? From a social culture point of view, how are we going to work together? How are we going to continue to build the networks? How are we going to look after the well-being of our team? How are we going to reward and recognise people? Because we may not be able to take them out for lunch once a week like we might have, or buy them a coffee or whatever, because they're not with us every day. So what does that look like? And how do we make sure that we've still got that diversity inclusion happening as well? From a technology point of view, have we got all the hardware and software that we need? How many people got into a work from home scenario and couldn't get things working? It's very frustrating. You don't have an IT tech person to grab from the other floor or ring up. So making sure all that stuff is working. The other one there I want to touch on was security of information. Okay, and this has been a challenge for some organisations, is we're letting everybody go out to their homes to work, but what are we doing with the security of our information? Okay. Legal, so mitigating risks, exposures, work from home injuries, and I dare say that a lot of that is still coming, okay, because, you know, we've worked from home on the couch for 12 months and now we've got a bad back, and how, you know, when is that coming? So we need to be careful of that one. And environmental, so the work from home setup, the conditions, how many hubs do we need? How much office space do we actually need anymore? And what do the work settings look like? So this gives you some categories, if you like, to have a think about of all the aspects that come into the hybrid workplace scenarios. The other thing to think about is tools. So what are the tools that I've got? And we've looked at this from if we're in the same place, a different place, we're on the same time, or we're in a different time. So you can see at the bottom here, same time, same place, we were in the office. It's pretty easy, we're all together. When we're in the same place, but we're on different times, so what can we use? We've got our whiteboards. So you can use your MS Task Planner. You can use posts, notebooks, files. So that's when we're in the same place, but I'm not necessarily in the office at the same time you are. You know, Paula can come in on Monday, but I can only come in Tuesday. How do we still communicate? Over this side, if we're in different places, but we're on the same time zone, we're using things like our telepresence, as I said, videos, our MS Team meetings, we're using Zoom, okay? That's how we're communicating in the same time, but in different locations. And at the top there, we've got different times and different places. So it might be your email, it might be your Teams chat, you might have shared apps that you use, you might have MS Tasking Planners as well to collaborate there. Is there any other tools that people are using at the moment? Anyone got any cool, funky apps that they're using? Anyone use Trello or Monday? Trello?
There's a good one called Mural, which is a shared whiteboarding brainstorming space.
Great,
It's really
yeah.
nice one.
Yeah, MS Whiteboard is another one as well. Yeah, anybody else?
I use Asana.
Asana? Could you tell us what that is?
It's like Monday.
Like Monday, yes, it's a planning style app. Yeah, yeah. So there is lots of tools out there we can use, but often the challenge is finding the one that suits what you need it to do. It's free. I love the free ones as well. Yeah, so lots of tools that we can use in this way. The other thing to think about from a leadership perspective is how well do you know your team? Okay, if you don't know your team, when you don't see them every day, it's going to make things even harder. Okay. We use things like we've got a remote worker assessment, which is a very powerful tool in helping assess our team members as to what their self-directiveness looks like, how self-disciplined they are, self-motivation, self-communication. We also helps to gauge what their attitude looks like, what their adaptability is like, their trustworthiness, and how they communicate with their own team. So this report is quite innovative in that we're starting to think about who is our team, what are these metrics saying about them, and how we can use that to help lead them better. Okay. You can see a couple here. I just grabbed a little snapshot of these are all the traits in green that this person does really well. So they like taking initiative. They're very motivated on a daily basis of others. They like being an active member in a project team. So we can start to see some of the traits of each individual in our team. We have other tools that we can use, which is the DISC that I've just spoken about. And with DISC, we can use it from our own point of view, but we also can see a snapshot of our team and see what are the personality styles that we have on our team and how can we use those. We also have the social and emotional tools as well that are available there, and ATI can help us with all of those things. So knowing your team is really important because you don't see them in the office every single day. If you don't know who they are, what they're about, then it's very hard to keep on top of that and keep supporting them. I was going to do this, but we're going to run out of time. I think, given this, so I'm going to skip through that at the moment. We'll just have some questions at the end, I think. So the next one I wanted to just quickly to touch on was checking compassionately. And I've mentioned this a couple of times, not the pick up the phone and say, Bob, where are you at with this? Where's this report? I haven't seen you online. What's going on? We don't want to have that command and control leadership style. You need to select the appropriate channels for check-ins. So is it a phone call? Is it a chat? Is it a Zoom or a face-to-face meeting? What does it look like? Have an individual approach, because not everybody is going to want a Teams video call with you. Not everybody is going to cope with just a little text message saying, how are you going? Okay. So try and find that individualized approach that works. And ask lots of questions, don't assume. There was a gentleman in the session earlier, and I don't think he's here now, but he mentioned about that when you're on a video call, it's very hard to pick up on everyone's body language and how everyone is reacting to what you're saying. Okay, so our ability to ask questions and don't just get off the call and say, oh, well, no one said anything, so everything's okay. You know, don't assume that everyone is okay with it, and ask lots of questions as we go through. The other thing from a leadership perspective is performance. So have you set really clear goals for your team? Okay, do we understand when things have to come back? Do we understand when I need your comments on that? Having those quality performance conversations have been more important than ever before. Okay, because we can't see people's productivity in the office, so we have to talk to them about it online. And offer consistent feedback. Okay, we're very big on giving feedback at all times, whether it is good or it's for people to develop. So thinking through that as well is important. And the last part I just wanted to quickly touch on was about collaboration. So most of the time when we're in the office, we're having synchronous collaboration. So we're together and we're talking and it's easier. This asynchronous collaboration is something that is becoming more and more important in our workplaces. And basically what we're saying, this is the exchange of ideas and knowledge when schedules permit, rather than connecting in real time. Okay, so I might be working on a project with one of you. I go away and I come up with a whole bunch of ideas while I'm exercising in front of my TV. Okay, and I get online and I put them all into our Teams board. And then you might not get to that project until later in the day. So then you can log on and see all of the comments that I've made and add your own ideas to that. And that's what we mean about asynchronous. It's not happening in real time, it's getting built along the way. So what are the tools that we can use that now? MS Teams provides us with platforms, but also other apps allow for that to happen as well. Here we give a little bit of an overview of that. So if we're looking at synchronous work, when we're co-located, it's a meeting, or it's the chat at the coffee, at the coffee machine, or it's the passing comments in the hallway, or it's the informal meetings that we have. If we're looking for synchronous work, but we're distributed in different locations, well, that's when it comes back to the online Zoom meetings or video meetings. We can also be working alone, but be in the same location, okay? And we can still do this asynchronous work, and there's probably some of that was going on before, but probably find it's going to increase a little bit. And then we've got our asynchronous work when we're distributed. So we're working alone and we're in different locations as well. So as a leader, we have to start thinking about, well, how am I using the spread of synchronous versus asynchronous collaboration with my teams? The lady here who said they all come in on a Monday, so that is having all that synchronous work happen on the Monday when they're all in the office together, perhaps. But then how do we manage for the rest of the week when everyone is either working alone or they're working alone but they're together? So having a think about that as well. And how do we make the asynchronous work? You kind of need ground rules around it. So you need to say, this is the platform that we're using. This is where I want the ideas to go. This is where it's going to happen. And this is the time frame we need you to respond. So I might need you to check this board every single day for new updates, whatever it is. You need to be organised. So you need to have a slot, let people go. okay, whether it's a team in the teams or however you like to do it. And the other thing to think about asynchronous communication, because it's not happening real time, you almost have to over communicate. It has to be detailed. Because if I read it and I'm like, what is Joe talking about today? I'm going to have to go back and ask more questions, and then it's going to go back and forth, and it's going to slow the process down even more. So in some ways, we have to be over communicating and being over detailed when we're using these forms of communication that we've got available. So to sum up, I want to just have a look at some of the things I want you to take away from today and have a think about. So knowing your style, okay? By knowing your style, it means that you can develop further as leaders, okay? Because you know what you're really good at and you know some of the areas that you can improve on. You need to know your team style. So how well do you know your teams? Who have you got? You need to provide tailored leadership. Okay, one style will not fit all in this case. You need to ensure they feel visible and included, because we know that is one thing that happens with a hybrid workplace is people don't feel like they're visible or they're included in what's going on. You need to maximise your synchronous and asynchronous collaboration opportunities. So when is that going to happen? Be clear in your mind about when are we going to collaborate, when are we not. Okay. Keep an engaged team with clear performance measures. Check in on productivity. Don't let the burnout come in. Okay. Who have you got that is working big hours? Who have you got that doesn't appear to be working big hours, but maybe they are? Okay. So it's about knowing exactly what's going on there. And by we ask questions to find that out. Okay. The more questions you ask, the more you're going to find out. Compassionately check in and be mindful of mental health and well-being. Use your programs and apps and any tools that you have available. Get to know them. Train people on how to use them. And leaders, get some camera skills. Okay, I want you to all go out of here today and check how you look when you're on an MS meeting. Are they looking up your nose? Do they what's the lighting like? Can they actually see your face? Okay. One of the big ones is, can they see your eyes? Okay, we connect as humans with faces and eyes in particular. So if I have a glare coming in on my glasses, on Zoom, no one can see my eyes. Okay, so get some camera skills, and then that will improve how your presence is online as well. Oh.
I'm just interested, you talk there about checking in about mental health and well-being.
Yes.
And I absolutely agree that's really important. I've always been critical of that kind of "Are you okay?" day, and any suggestions on kind of what to say or how to go about it for people?
Look, I think it is, again, it comes down to asking questions. And I would be using more the languages, what support do you need? Okay. How can I help you get this done? What are the roadblocks that we've got here? Okay. So it is about choosing your language, but again, I think this comes down to knowing your team as well. If I know what style of person you are, then I can think about what are the questions I'm going to ask you. Will direct questions work, or do I have to take a little bit of a different approach? For some people, you have to just ask a completely direct question to get a direct answer. That doesn't work for everybody. So I think it's how you can do that.
In that regard, we've also got to be careful we don't fall into the trap of wanting to reach out to someone and doing it in a personal way and inadvertently asking them negative questions all the time.
Yes.
Sometimes in the way we engage with people, when we're seeking to help them, we actually inadvertently place in their own mind the thought that, well, what are you struggling with? What can I help you with? But sometimes it's worth just starting with what things are working for you. And it's not a praise sandwich, but it's just subliminally building the expectation in people that everything's not bad. There is some good stuff and some bad stuff. And as a leader, we need to position people neurologically to say that things are okay and there's stuff that I can help you.
Yeah, definitely. Totally agree. Does anyone have any other comments? Yes.
Yeah, just further to that, a lot of leadership, especially management, obviously obviously aren't particularly well trained in terms of the verbiage of such conversations, but also more critically aren't trained for what happens when somebody actually says, no, I'm not doing well at all. And it is a lot more likely at the moment. The great resignation is occurring as people job swap to go to some other crap job because theirs is crap. And it's all too hard and they're doing 3 people's work. This is a social phenomenon now. So that's kind of, I guess, the silver bullet there is none, but it's actually training in those spaces also, as well as camera skills is quite critical. And these are unregulated spaces. HR professionals, posh professionals, wellbeing professionals, often themselves struggle to keep the pace of what to do in these situations.
Wendy, would you like to comment?
Yeah, I agree. Thank you for that comment. I agree completely, because these conversations, maybe I should stand up. These conversations don't come necessarily easy. And it's something that we built into a couple of courses we run. One is the conflict cooperation, and it's how to have the difficult conversation, but it's the type of conversation that you want to have. So is it a authority conversation where perhaps someone's actually just not necessarily delivering what you're wanting? Is it a behavior conversation? Is it a performance conversation, or is it a sensitive topic? Because each of those 4 categories are dealt with differently. And when it comes down to sensitive topic, then yes, it definitely changes gears in that. And we cover some of that in our emotional intelligence for leaders, but there is some framework that you can use very simply. It might sound something like, this conversation isn't about your performance. I've noticed X, Y, and Z, and it's behavior based. I'm wondering if you've noticed that too. And just be quiet and just see if they respond to that. And they might say yes and open up, or no, I haven't. Right? And then you can explore it a little bit further, but it's also knowing when to pull back from that, because some of this stuff is highly sensitive and very private for people. So you're right, it does take in getting some training and getting used to having some of those conversations in the safety net of a room where you can make mistakes, trial it out, test it out before trying to do it live on somebody. Yeah. But there's different ways to have that conversation, but you're right, the frameworks actually really are quite helpful.
Where trust gets out today, hybrid work and work from home doesn't work if there's no culture of trust. And that's why most state agencies struggle terribly with this. There's no leadership signals from the top that are driving any of it, and they're not equipped at any of the middle layers. Just do the very simple thing. Most of this is incredibly simple. You just do it. It's that easy. But trust is the missing element. And no one's going to tell you the truth when you don't have trust. So candid leadership is, of course, the real underpinning thing. All the verbiage in the world on active listening and emotional intelligence with no relationship in place is going to lead to zero outcome.
Well, on a large scale project of people transitioning to hybrid working, this is over a decade, well, not quite a decade, but there, where leaders had to arrange a certain amount of activity to get that done before this project goes live. Had a group of them in the room, and it's, where are you at with your team? Are your team ready? Yes. And how do you know? Because they told me. I'm like, okay. All right, but how do you know for sure? Or, well, I do trust them. But then what does that trust look like? Well, what's the behaviors that actually translate that trust into actual being, instead of just talking about it? A lot of times in the training course, we'll have what's your qualities that you need, and someone will put up trust. And I think they're done. Just get some trust. What does it look like? You say trust, but what is it? What do? Do you follow through on commitments? Do you say you do what you say you're going to do? Do you keep your promises? Do you keep your confidences? You go from.
You need the flexibility there as well, though.
Yeah.
There's a lot going on for people working from home, and even just at the moment, people will have people in Sydney, people have people overseas where there's a lot going on. There'll be days when people don't want to do any work, but my husband's a classic example. He works brilliantly from 10 p.m. till often 2 in the morning, but he's home today with a sick child. you need that trust and flexibility there that people will make it work and that the outcomes will be reached. And not everybody's going to be wanting to express that they've got someone in Sydney who's caught COVID. They're not always going to want to tell you that.
No.
But if you've got the trust and you've got the flexibility, you don't necessarily need to be told that either.
That's right.
And you need to model the behaviours. As the leader, if you're not modelling the behaviours, that's where it falls down, because that's exactly what you just said, is that coming to the top, you're not seeing the behaviours that we feel should be happening on this level. So this is where we have to start modelling those behaviours and saying, well, actually, I've got downtime now, or this is when I work the best. So we've got to start doing that. Any other comments, questions?
I'm curious to know, is there anybody here that would put their hand up saying that they're being led or managed or leading or managing brilliantly in a hybrid world? Or are they all in the Power BI?
I had a remarkable.
So where do you work?
I work at City of Coburn. So.
Wow.
Oh, it looks like Coburn to us.
So I have 3 young children. I have a husband that works FIFO. I essentially work around my family. I'm at the moment the person trying to flexibility or hybrid.
So how's the trust? And what does that, how do you feel trusted or?
I feel highly suspected. So I have shifted teams. I work closely with the CEO as well as a couple of high-level leaders. They just trust me to make decisions and get on with it. If I make a mistake, they support me. And by default, I get the same for everyone around me.
So in your case, it's a little bit, so goes the leader, so goes the team.
Correct.
Because your CEO actually has a lot of that and demonstrates a lot of that, and then it filters down.
Very much
Yeah.
so. And we've shifted CEOs recently, so it's a bit of a change process for our workforce. So we were very commanding as well, and our new leader is very agile and very realistic. So it's taking a bit for, especially for those who comes from local government. We don't change rapidly. We nothing goes very quickly with the government. So for us, it's been a real process of building trust with our CEO. It has come down to a lot of him leading by example. So often he'll be working from home. He'll leave at 2 o'clock. People say, where are you going? He's like, I'm going home, I'm done. Like, so there'll be days where I'll finish a big project at 1, 2 o'clock and he's probably go home. And we go spend time with my kids. I think we'll do my shopping. It's fine. He often shows up in teams meeting in hoodies. He walks around the office in jeans and a t-shirt. He has no expectations as long, his motto is, as long as you get shit done, I don't care how you do it. Not my problem. You guys are adults, sort it out.
So how do you manage that? And that's fantastic, by the way. But how does the business then manage? Say if there was an incident with, you know, yourself, that would lead into some sort of, you know, workers' compensation, or you know, how do you manage your timesheets and how do you manage the those sorts of aspects of that?
So we are in transition period at the moment, so we are all going through the process of position descriptions. So rather than being task-based, we get purpose-led. So my purpose is around creating experiences and relationships for our staff so they can do the best work they can. How I do that is completely up to me. So that's my overarching purpose, and then underneath it I have some KPIs built. How I choose to achieve those KPIs is between me and my supervisors. We have touch points in place, so if I feel like I'm not going to meet my target, I have that discussion and they provide me support for me. I also have a lot of collaboration time with our HR team, so everyone works. Collaboration is becoming a really key value of everything that we do. So no one at Coburn is intended to work autonomously. We all work as a team across every single thing that we do. We all collaborate, there's different perspectives, there's different voices, and there's diversity on every single project. I guess any sort of risk is always mitigated because there are multiple handles that can provide this.
partnership thing is pretty simple. It's the same what you said, but it's you clock watching there.
Yeah, it makes no difference.
It makes no difference.
Oh,
If you
and
actually knew
I
whether
agree.
they were outcomes, it's so.
Sometimes
even
you've
if
got
they're a big
regulations
test
though,
results,
right? So
appreciate
if you've got, you know, those sorts of things that are restricting you from a
The industrial
that
system hasn't caught up with
Yeah,
it. If you want to
exactly.
trade hours in core hours for night hours,
Yeah.
there's impediments, legal impediments
Yeah.
remaining in place to that flexibility. So there's a big element of risk embracing going on in this,
Yeah.
controlling and acknowledging and managing risks. But
So HR team has developed certain policies for those of us who want flexibility. But like so for me, for example, because I've got staff who work like staff who work around hours, but I feel very sort of can breaks all types of things. Yeah. I have a set amount of hours that I have to achieve.
get the job done.
And does that work with your internal stakeholders? That's another thing, I guess, when we're thinking about all of this stuff, is that's great, but with everyone, like we talked about before, did the school hours, because we've got lots of mums. But then how does the business survive on that? Because it is about the person, but we also got to think about the business.
Yeah, so we're creating bespoke work structures with what teams need. I don't actually have a physical desk where that works for me, our team, so our team is predominantly working. We have a day similar to what we will come in. It's our collaboration time, it's our meeting time, it's our workshopping time. All of my face time at the office space is around collaboration. So I'm back to back meetings. When I go home is when I go home. So we work around what a team's requirements are, and it's not, there's some teams that they want to work there, like our rates team, for example, they simply want to be in the office because that's what it makes for them. So we cater around the team needs.
And I think this is a really good example of what this day is also about, and why we've left spaces for networking. Because it's, you know, I think it's going to be like, who wants to join the city program? And I'm your CEO, Tony Bryn, is somebody who I've known in the past and is an amazing leader. So, but it's wonderful to hear, you know, sometimes people can be amazing leaders, but on the inside they're not amazing leaders. So but there's an opportunity to exchange ideas, ask questions, and that's what this is all about. So thank you for being honest and asking questions. We've had a great session. I just want to say thank you to Joe. Can you join with me?